The sun dipped low over Willow Creek, painting the quiet Alabama town in warm amber light. At the far edge of that town, past the paved roads, past the newly built subdivisions, past the signs promising luxury living coming soon, lay a quiet stretch of land that had belonged to one family for 5 generations. And standing right in the middle of that land, hands on her hips, boots planted firmly in the red clay, was Marietta King, a 74-year-old black woman with silver hair tied beneath a navy bandana. People in Willow Creek didn't talk much about Marietta. Some avoided her, others respected her, many underestimated her. But one thing no one could deny: the woman knew every inch of her family's land. She knew where her great-grandfather planted the first pecan tree. She knew where her grandmother hid the deed during the Jim Crow years. And she knew exactly where the property line started and ended, which made what she was staring at all the more infuriating. Rows of freshly built homes, shiny, uniform, cookie-cutter houses, lined the edge of what had always been her land. Driveways, mailboxes, vinyl siding, all the same dull beige. Excavators still idled nearby, workers moving back and forth, completely unaware that they were trespassing on land Marietta's family had protected for over a century. And, at the center of the swarm of activity, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows parked in the middle of the dirt. Out stepped Elliot Crane, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. A thin, pale man with a clipped beard and an even more clipped attitude. He looked at Marietta like she was an interruption. Marietta looked at him like he was a problem. "Ma'am," Elliot said, straightening his blazer as if dust might leap onto it. "You're standing inside a restricted construction zone." Marietta raised an eyebrow so slow it could have cut glass. "Restricted by who?" Elliot gestured grandly to the homes behind him. "By the Willow Creek Estates HOA. We're building 96 premium homes as part of our approved expansion. This area is now part of our development." Marietta didn't blink. "This area," she repeated, "is my land." Elliot laughed. Actually laughed. "I'm afraid you're mistaken. This property has belonged. It belonged to my grandfather in 1923, my father in 1952, me in 1978. And today, it still belongs to me. Nothing mistaken about it." Elliot's smile faltered. "We purchased this land legally." "From who?" she snapped. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. The workers slowed. A few turned to watch. Elliot cleared his throat. "From the county records, of course. And did those records show my name?" "Well," Elliot's eyes darted away. "Not exactly. But the land was listed as unused." "No, it wasn't." Her voice stayed calm, but her jaw tightened. "What you saw was a clerical error the county never fixed. I sent filings for correction last year." Elliot waved a dismissive hand. "Be that as it may, the development is already underway. 96 homes are nearly complete. People have already purchased lots, and none of that," Marietta said evenly, "has a thing to do with me." Elliot stepped closer, lowering his voice as if speaking to a misbehaving child. "Look, Mum, I understand this is emotional, but fighting this would be pointless. The HOA has lawyers, money, influence. We follow zoning laws. Everything is approved." Marietta stared at him for a long moment. Then she let out a breath that sounded like centuries of patience. "I know exactly what the HOA has," she said. "Do you know what I have?" Elliot crossed his arms. "A misplaced sense of ownership?" Marietta smiled, slowly, dangerously, like a storm building. "No," she said. "I have proof." Elliot's confidence cracked for the first time. "Proof of what?" "That the Willow Creek HOA," she said, leaning in, "just built 96 homes on land that legally belongs to me." His eyes widened. Marietta continued, voice steady, "And that means every driveway, every mailbox, every foundation, every inch of concrete and siding is standing on land you have no legal right to." Elliot swallowed hard. You can't possibly think." "I think," Marietta said, turning away and beginning her slow walk back toward her truck. "You and your HOA walked right into something you weren't prepared for." Elliot called after her, "This won't hold up. You can't win. The development is too far along." She paused at the driver's door, looked back, half smiled. "Who said anything about winning?" Elliot froze. Marietta tapped the door of her old truck. "This isn't a fight, Mr. Crane. It's a trap, and every one of you stepped right into it." Then she got in, started the engine, and drove off, leaving Elliot standing in the dust, confused, rattled, and suddenly very, very aware that he underestimated the wrong woman. because Marietta King hadn't come there to stop the construction. She was waiting for it, planning for it, counting on it. And now? The HOA had just handed her exactly what she wanted. Elliot Crane barely slept. All night he sat at his glass dining table, staring at blueprints, legal documents, emails, and county permits spread out like a crime scene. His wife went to bed. His phone buzzed non-stop from board members. But Elliot just sat there, whispering the same sentence to himself. She must be bluffing. She must be bluffing. By sunrise, he wasn't so sure. At 7:12 a.m., he slammed his files into a leather briefcase, straightened his tie, and sped straight to the Willow Creek County Records office. The building was old, dusty, and painfully slow, nothing like his perfectly manicured HOA headquarters. He stormed inside. Behind the counter sat Mrs. Dolores Weaver, a clerk who had worked in records for 43 years and had no patience for people who walked too fast or talked too loud. She eyed Elliot over her reading glasses. "You look like a man in a hurry," she said. "I need the land records for parcel 18B through 24F, he snapped. Dolores blinked. "You mean the King property?" Elliot froze. His throat tightened. "The what property?" Dolores pushed herself up from her chair and began rummaging through a cabinet of thick paper files. Actual paper. Elliot tapped his fingers impatiently against the counter. At last, she pulled a dusty folder labeled King Family Holdings. His stomach dropped. Dolores set the folder in front of him. "You know, folks have been trying to buy that land for decades. Miss Marietta never budged. Not once. Stubborn woman, but smart. Too smart for half this town." Elliot swallowed as she opened the folder. There it was, clear as daylight. The entire 27-acre stretch was legally owned by Marietta King. Signed, stamped, recorded. Even worse, there were recent filings. Dolores tapped a form with her pen. "These came in last year. Correction documents. Says the county made an error labeling the land inactive. Miss Marietta sent notarized proof of ownership. Everything was approved." Elliot felt his pulse spike. "Approved?" he hissed. "Then why didn't it show up on our development records?" Dolores shrugged. "Maybe you looked in the wrong place. Maybe someone on your team didn't update your files. Not my problem." Elliot rubbed his temples. His voice came out shaky. "You don't understand. We built 96 homes on that land. 96. Dolores didn't even flinch. She just pushed the folder toward him. "Then I suggest you talk to Miss Marietta," she said calmly, "before she talks to someone else. Meanwhile." Marietta King sat at her kitchen table, sipping chicory coffee from a chipped mug as morning sunlight poured through lace curtains. Her old wood-frame house was small, humble, filled with photographs of ancestors who had fought to keep their land through segregation, intimidation, and decades of pressure from developers. She opened a thick envelope on the table, a certified copy of the updated county deed. It wasn't new to her, she'd already memorized every word. But today, reading it felt different. Because for the first time, the world outside had something to lose. A soft knock came at her door. She didn't need to guess who it was. "Come on in, Sheriff," she called. Sheriff Dean Holloway stepped inside, hat in hand. He was a tall, weathered white man in his 60s who had known Marietta since childhood. He respected her. Feared her a little, too. He cleared his throat. "Morning, Miss King." She said, sipping her coffee. I reckon you know why I'm here." "The HOA. Well, Elliot Crane came to my office at dawn. Man looked like he'd seen a ghost. He says you told him they're building on your land." Marietta set her mug down gently. I told him the truth. The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. "Miss King, 96 homes is a lot of money. A lot of families. A lot of... I don't care about the HOA's money," she said. "I care about the law." He sighed. "Are you planning to file charges? Evictions? It'll start a war in this town." Marietta looked up slowly, eyes sharp as steel. "Sheriff, I'm not filing anything yet." He blinked. "You're not?" "No," she said. "Not until they make the next mistake I'm waiting for." The sheriff stared at her. Most people made the mistake of seeing Marietta as a frail old woman. She was anything but. "What mistake is that?" he finally asked. Marietta smiled. "That HOA has two options," she said quietly. "Either they admit publicly what they did, or they try to bully me into giving up my land. And which one do you think they'll pick?" "Oh, Sheriff," she said, chuckling. "People like Elliot Crane don't admit. They threaten." The sheriff's shoulders dropped. "And you're ready for that?" "I've been ready for 40 years. Later that afternoon, Elliot Crane marched up Marietta's driveway with 2 HOA board members behind him. They were sweating through their shirts, despite pretending they weren't nervous. Marietta rocked calmly in her porch chair. "Miss King," Elliot began stiffly. "We need to talk, so talk." He cleared his throat. "Our lawyers reviewed the situation. There seems to be a discrepancy." "No discrepancy," she corrected. "Just truth finally catching up." Elliot's voice sharpened. "Look, we can negotiate. The HOA is prepared to offer you a settlement. I don't want a settlement. We can offer you double the properties appraised. I don't want money." Elliot's face tightened. "What do you want?" Marietta leaned forward in her chair, eyes gleaming with unshakable certainty. "I want you to realize," she said softly, "you don't own 1 inch of those 96 homes." Elliot's jaw clenched. "Are you trying to ruin us?" "No," she said. "You ruined yourselves." She stood up slowly. "And now, Mr. Crane, the clock starts ticking." Elliot frowned. "For what?" Marietta turned and walked back inside. "For the trap you walked into," she said, closing her door, to spring. By the next morning, panic had begun to seep through Willow Creek Estates like a slow, cold fog. At first, only the HOA board knew what was happening. But secrets have short lives, especially in a neighborhood where gossip traveled faster than electricity. By noon, homeowners were calling, texting, pounding the office doors, and Elliot Crane was drowning. He stood at the front of the HOA conference room, sweating through his shirt as board members argued over each other. Legal pads, laptops, and coffee cups covered the long table. "This is a disaster," one woman snapped. "You said the land was cleared," another shouted. "My husband is a realtor. Do you know what this will do to home values?" Someone else added. Elliot slammed his palms down on the table. "Enough!" The room fell silent. He took a shaky breath. "We need solutions, not panic." Board member Brian Hill leaned forward. "There is no solution unless she signs over the land. The law's on her side." Elliot glared. "She won't. She's doing this on purpose." "And that," Brian said, crossing his arms, "is exactly what scares me." Another voice chimed in. Lauren, the HOA treasurer. "So what now? We beg her." Elliot's jaw clenched. "We pressure her." Lauren blinked. "Pressure a 74-year-old? Elliot, that's insane." But before she could finish, Elliot opened his laptop and turned the screen toward them. Emails, drafts, plans. He tapped one. "We'll start by filing a zoning objection." Brian shook his head. "Won't work. We'll send inspectors to her property." "Illegal," Lauren countered. "We'll cite her for code violations." "She lives outside HOA jurisdiction," Brian said. Elliot's face darkened. "Then we make her life uncomfortable. Long enough that she gives in." The room went quiet with discomfort, but no one argued. Same morning, Marietta's porch. Marietta sat on her porch again, knitting slowly as blue jays hopped along her railing. She felt the shift in the air. She'd been expecting it. Her niece, Danielle, a sharp young attorney from Atlanta, pulled into the driveway. She stepped out in a navy pantsuit, carrying a thick folder. "Auntie," Danielle said, hugging her, "I came as soon as I got your message." Marietta smiled softly. "Told you it was time." Danielle looked toward the rows of houses in the distance. "You weren't exaggerating. They actually built all that on your land." "They did. And you let them." "I did." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "So what's the play?" Marietta's smile deepened. This was the moment she'd been waiting 40 years for. "Those homes," she said, "aren't the problem. The people aren't the problem. The HOA isn't even the biggest problem." Danielle frowned. "Then who is?" Marietta tapped her chair arm. "The developer who tried to steal this land in 1987. Their descendants are the ones funding this HOA expansion. This isn't about houses. It's about history trying to repeat itself." Danielle's eyes hardened. "So the trap is bigger than they think." "Oh yes," Marietta said. "Much bigger." She handed Danielle a brown envelope. Inside were documents, photographs, receipts, records of threats, bribe attempts, illegal survey markings, and meetings from decades ago. Marietta had kept everything. Watched, waited. "This isn't just about ownership," Danielle whispered. "This is evidence." "You're not trying to win land rights," Danielle said slowly. "You're building a legal case." "And I'm almost done," Marietta replied. "But first, we need them to make a mistake, a big one, public, recorded, on paper or camera." Danielle nodded. "And the HOA is arrogant enough to do exactly that." "That's why," Marietta said, smiling like a hunter who had already chosen her prey. "They're walking right where I want them." That afternoon, HOA headquarters, the next mistake came sooner than Marietta expected. Elliot marched into the county office again. This time not to check records but to demand a meeting. He dragged 2 board members with him, storming through the hall until he reached the planning department. He didn't see the clerk behind the counter pull out her phone. Or hit record. "Listen," he barked at the zoning officer. "The county messed up. That woman, King, she's lying. We need those records changed." The zoning officer frowned. "Sir, everything is legal. The deed is hers." Elliot slammed his fist on the counter. "I don't care. We have homes on that land. Fix it. I can't fix a deed." "You will," Elliot growled, leaning in, "or the homeowners will destroy this department." The room fell silent. Someone cleared their throat. The clerk behind the desk. She held up her phone, still recording. "Sir," she said loudly, "are you threatening a government office?" Elliot froze. Board members froze. People in the lobby stared. The clerk continued. "Because this video is now evidence." Elliot tried to speak, but his voice cracked. No, I didn't. But the damage was done." He turned and rushed out of the building, face pale as chalk. The recording had already uploaded to the county's public server. Evening. Marietta's living room. Danielle sat on the couch, watching the video on her phone. She couldn't help it. She laughed. "Auntie, he gave us everything we needed." Marietta sipped her tea. "Clock still ticking." Danielle closed the file. "What's the next step?" Marietta leaned back, eyes gleaming like a general before the final battle. "Now," she said, "we make them understand what those 96 homes truly cost." Danielle nodded slowly. "You think they're scared now?" Marietta shook her head. "No, baby, they haven't started panicking yet. But they will, when they learn what I'm about to do." The next morning began quietly, too quietly for the Willow Creek HOA. Elliot arrived at the office to find reporters gathered outside, microphones poised, cameras blinking red. He froze in the parking lot as the first shout came. "Mr. Crane, is it true the HOA built 96 illegal homes on private land? Did you threaten county officials? Is it true residents might have to evacuate?" Elliot's face turned white. He shoved past them, storming inside. But even there, chaos waited. Homeowners packed the lobby, shouting, demanding explanations. His phone buzzed with messages he couldn't face, but the worst part, the part that made his stomach turn, was the email blinking at the top of his inbox. Subject: Notice of legal action. King family representation. Elliot clicked it with trembling hands. Inside was a formal letter from attorney Danielle King, stating that the HOA, developer and construction company were all now subjects of civil litigation for illegal land usage, unauthorized construction, property encroachment, attempted coercion, and civil intimidation. Elliot's vision blurred. Then he saw the last line, "We advise you prepare for immediate injunction." He dropped into his chair. He couldn't breathe. The trap wasn't closing. It had already closed. Meanwhile, on the King family land, county officials, surveyors and legal observers lined up along the property boundary. News vans crept forward. Drones hovered overhead. Marietta watched it all from her porch, rocking slowly, Daniela at her side. "You ready?" Danielle asked. A black SUV rolled up the driveway. Not Elliot. This one carried a very different passenger. Out stepped County Judge Harriet Cole, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. She approached with a respectful nod. "Miss King," the judge said, "I've reviewed your files. Your documentation is airtight." Marietta smiled lightly. "I've had time to prepare." Judge Cole continued, "Given the breach, I'm authorized to issue a temporary injunction effective immediately." Danielle nodded, "Meaning construction halts." Marietta's voice was calm. "And the homes?" The judge glanced toward the neatly built subdivision. "Their future depends on the final ruling." Danielle smirked. "Which will be very expensive for the HOA." Judge Cole nodded. "This level of unauthorized development could result in millions in damages, maybe compulsory purchase of the land at a price you determine." But Marietta didn't look satisfied. Not yet. She asked the question she'd been waiting decades to ask. "And what about the developer? The same one who tried to steal this land from my father? The one tied to this HOA?" Judge Cole paused. "You want them involved in the case?" "I want them accountable." The judge nodded slowly. "Then they will be back at the HOA headquarters, the worst meeting of their lives." Elliot stood at the front of the packed room. Homeowners shouted from every corner. "You lied to us. You told us this land was purchased. Are we going to lose our homes?" "My wife's pregnant." Where are we supposed to go? Elliot tried to calm them, but he wasn't calm himself. Our lawyers. We have strategies. We're working on solutions. But no one believed him anymore. Then Brian Hill, once Elliot's staunch supporter, stood up and pointed at him. This is your fault. You ignored red flags. You pushed the expansion. You silenced concerns. You caused this. Others nodded. Some shouted. One woman threw her packet of HOA documents at him. Elliot's hands shook at the podium, and the worst was still coming. The news conference on Marietta's land cameras flashed as Marietta stepped up to the small wooden podium Danielle had set on the gravel. Judge Cole stood behind them. Residents in the background watched anxiously. Marietta cleared her throat. My name is Marietta King. This land has been in my family for 103 years. My grandfather bought it in 1921, and my family has protected it ever since. Flashbulbs. Silence. Last year, the county made an error in its records. I corrected that error. I submitted my deed, proof of ownership, and historical documents. She paused, looked directly at the cameras, and the Willow Creek HOA ignored all of it. Gasps spread through the crowd. They built 96 homes on land that was never theirs. They threatened my dignity. They tried to intimidate me. She glanced at Danielle, then the judge. And now, they will answer for it. Cameras clicked like machine guns. Danielle stepped forward. Effective today, we are filing a lawsuit against the Willow Creek HOA, the developer, and several responsible parties for illegal construction and property encroachment. We will also pursue damages reflecting the land's new market value. A reporter asked, Miss King, what do you want out of this? Marietta looked out at the sea of faces, some angry, some fearful, some hopeful. I don't want them to lose their homes, she said softly. Homeowners exchanged confused looks. I don't want families forced out, children displaced, people punished for the mistakes of the powerful. Her next words dropped like thunder. But I do want justice, and I want ownership. She pointed toward the subdivision. If they want to live on my land, then they will live on my terms, not the HOA's. A ripple spread through the crowd. Danielle smiled proudly. Judge Cole nodded approvingly. Marietta finished. The Willow Creek HOA walked onto my land thinking they could take what was mine. Instead, they built an entire neighborhood that now legally belongs to me. Chaos erupted. Cheers, gasps, shouts. The trap had sprung, perfectly. That night, Elliot's realization. Elliot sat alone in his dark office. He watched Marietta's full speech online. Every word. He watched the judge confirm the injunction. He watched homeowners cheer Marietta. And then he understood the truth. She didn't just win, she outplayed them. From the moment they dug that first foundation, she had been waiting, planning, preparing. And now, everything the HOA built, every sidewalk, every home, every inch of Willow Creek Estates, now belonged to the woman they tried to intimidate. Elliot buried his face in his hands. She hadn't fallen into the HOA's trap. They had fallen into hers.